Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente. Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente. Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente.
Oi, boa tarde, Vivian.
Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente.
Oi, Vivian, boa tarde. Te ouvindo. Oi, boa tarde, Vivian.
Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente.
Oi, Vivian, boa tarde. Te ouvindo. Oi, boa tarde, Vivian.
Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente.
Oi, Vivian, boa tarde. Te ouvindo. Oi, boa tarde, Vivian.
Eu quero entrar com a entrevista do cliente.
Oi, Vivian, boa tarde.
organization. In other universities, maybe called the business administration group. So it's really the business perspective. So I'm by training, I'm a combination of an economist and a political scientist. I did my PhD in Rotterdam University, maybe called the business administration group. So it's really the business perspective. So I'm by training, I'm a combination of an economist and a political scientist. I did my PhD in Rotterdam University. Isn't that the marvelous? This AI, it's great, isn't it? Let's see whether it works now. So the key question that I would like to discuss with you. So what is, how does the sustainability, the food system, the sustainable food system transition, how does it affect business collaboration? And I'm not going to stand here because that's right under the speaker. So that's the core. But and these are the 5 or 6 points that I would like to present to you and maybe even discuss with you. I'm happy to have an interactive meeting. So a bit about myself, my university, then the sustainability challenges business, a bit about more traditional perspectives on business collaborations, how and why do they collaborate, then more recent insights on business collaboration, particularly geared towards the sustainability challenges, and then a bit about cooperatives, because that is really the core of my research. Although we do, personally and our group, we do much more than cooperatives, and I'll get to that in a moment. But it's more like my personal interest in the role of agricultural cooperatives in a value chain. Traditionally, we looked at agricultural cooperatives from how can we improve the value chain, the efficiency, the quality, the innovation. And now we focus more on research on how can cooperatives support this transition towards more sustainable food systems. And what are the, let's say, the benefits, the advantages of a cooperative type of organization, or what are the challenges that these organizations face? Because I'm not going to say cooperatives is the solution for everything. I do think that cooperatives are good organizations or functional, effective organizations for particular situations and particular groups, certainly for smaller farmers, smallholder farmers, or farmers that, the not biggest big farmers, let's say that. So that's at the end. A bit about the university. It's located in Wageningen. Wageningen is a very small university, small town, and also relatively small university, just 13,000 students, 13,000. So it's small, but it's very dedicated. It's life sciences. Traditionally, it was an agricultural university, but now we say it's a life sciences university. Everything is about the food and the living environment. And the university is divided in 5 different groups. We have animal sciences, plant sciences, environmental sciences, food sciences, and we have social sciences. And my location, my place is in the social sciences. So I do collaborate a lot with our technical colleagues, but if you ask me what is your position, your role, then I would say I'm really a social scientist. Basically some details about our university. Like I said, 100 students from 100 different countries. So the interesting thing is that it's a very strong in research. So we have 3,700 faculty at the university level, and then we have another 3,500 people at the research level. And this research is what 20 years ago it was part of the Ministry of Agriculture. It's also where I started my career in the Economics Research Institute. But by bringing this together, we created, or people created, a very strong research-oriented university. There is a slight cultural difference. Here we do the teaching and additional research, and the people here are doing full-time research. So this maybe could be compared partly to Embrapa. So that's a bit of a, we don't have another separate agricultural research centers or institutes. It's all part of Wageningen University and research. So, well, my own background, I'm quite an interdisciplinary scholar, like I already said, economics, political science. I did my master in the University of Amsterdam, political science. Then I started working for the Agricultural Economics Research Institute, so I became an economist. Of course, I had a little bit of economics training. And then I did my PhD in Rotterdam, which is a very strong business school. So I moved a bit more to business. And then 20 years ago, I started working at the Business Management Organization Group in Wageningen. Now very, very happy to work in that group because it's a very dynamic group. We do a lot of different things. I have a nice slide. We do a lot of different things, and we have been discussing our strategy lately, and we realized that, oh, this is very broad what we do. We say we study how businesses can improve the sustainability and health at organization, industry, supply chain network, society level. And one of my colleagues made this very nice flower, basically indicating we do business organization studies, we do innovation management, business model innovation, collaboration in the supply chain networks, that's more my field, and entrepreneurship is a very important topic, both in terms of teaching and in terms of the research we do. So that's a big, I mean, because we are a relatively small university, also the social science is relatively small, so also the business administration group is small, so 20 people that want to do all these things. So you can imagine that everybody has its own specialization, and not you cannot say there are 5 or 10 people all working on strategic management, which at the big universities you would have that. I'm not sure how it is here, but in the Netherlands, if you would go to a large university with 20 or 30,000 students, then you would have a business administration group with 10 staff members on strategic management, 10 staff on operations research, 10 staff on marketing, 10. We do have to do everything, which is an advantage and which is a disadvantage, but we manage to deal with that, and we're very happy to be this diverse group. Now, let's move into the core of the presentation. And if I talk too long, just let me know. Then, so it's all just a few points about the evolution of the business of the concept of sustainability. We're probably all familiar with that. We all started with the Sustainable Development Goal, Sustainable Development definition of the Brundtland Committee in 1987. Then later we had a triple bottom line developed by Elkington. And I came across an interesting quote by Elkington in the Harvard Business Review. He said, basically in 2018 already, the triple bottom line wasn't designed to be just an accounting tool. That's how it's very often used. But he said, no, that's not what I meant. It was supposed to provoke deeper thinking about capitalism and its future. So he really emphasized the system change that. And I don't think that many people realize it, because this triple bottom line, it's such simple and therefore useful concept. But in the minds of many people, okay, let's just count the beans. Let's just count, how many points on social, how many points on people, and how many points on planet, and how many points on the other dimensions of the triple bottom line. But yeah, so this was already an indication of thinking in terms of going beyond just counting. And then we got the Sustainability Development Goals, 2015. We all know about that. And now, at least in Europe, we have the ESG. Maybe you have it here in Brazil as well, but ESG has become really the dominant. It basically goes back a little bit against okay, what do we have to report? And what do we have to report on? But anyway, it is a way of a way forward, I should say, because it no longer has this P of profit or money. Because if we talk about the sustainability of business, they have to make money anyway, otherwise they won't survive. So you don't have to put that much emphasis on it. The emphasis should really be on the environmental, on the social, and now we also have the governance, the business ethics, the independence of the board, or the inclusivity of the board. How many women are in the board, or other groups that are traditionally not represented? How democratic are the decisions being taken in the organization? So ESG is becoming really the dominant paradigm, I would almost say. I give a course on business theories and sustainability, and I always invite people from business, the sustainability managers, and they always talked about PPP and those type of things. And last 2 years, they suddenly talk about ESG because they have realized this is what it's all about now. Everybody, we have to report on ESG, and it's quite strong, and it's all because of the European Union. The European Union was already mentioned this morning. It's all about the European Green Deal. You can't read this, but that's maybe even better. But it says 2019. So in 2019, the European Commission came up with this grand idea of we have to make Europe more sustainable, more competitive, climate neutral, protect our natural habitat, be good for the people and for the economy. Well, a little bit of everything. So it's good to have these broad ambitions and to have this broad vision, but that's where it all started. And if we zoom in a bit more on what does it mean for legislation, and particularly legislation for business, these are the keywords nowadays. Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Companies have to report on these ESG indicators. So on their social and environmental impact. So that as of last year, that is compulsory for large listed companies. It also becomes soon compulsory for smaller listed companies, but it gives the direction. I mean, we can be sure that in a couple of years, all companies have to report on their sustainability activities. And as of this year, we have the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which basically means that companies have to take care, have to be careful about their impact on, where do I have it, right? The aim of the CSDDD, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, is foster sustainable, responsible corporate behavior in operations and across their global or national value chain. So this has a major impact also on companies when they look at their value chains. I had a student doing an internship with IKEA. IKEA, you all know, the furniture company. They were very keen on making sure exactly where their wood comes from, because with this directive, they can be held accountable and maybe even liable on if they use wood that comes from tropical rainforest or from deforestation. So it really will these although that's still a starting point, but these directive, and a directive in Europe means that it still has to be implemented in national legislation. So it takes a while, but it slowly clears the trend, the direction that legislation will impact the sustainability activities and strategies of the companies. So that's a bit of a background of the sustainable finance, of course, also important. That's what the European Union also want to. They emphasize a lot the the banks and the institutional investors and other impact investors. This group of investors is growing, and they need metrics. They need data, and ESG is going to give them. Okay, so that's the background. Now, what does it all mean for the businesses? And what does it mean for business collaboration? Well, sustainability is a dynamic concept. We already said it has changed over time. And it's a very broad concept. And, some people talk about social and other environmental. So it's not so easy to say, well, it's very easy to say I'm sustainable. I don't know any food product in the Dutch supermarket that does not have some kind of a claim that it's green or environmental friendly or sustainable. Every food product has it, but that doesn't say anything. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's greenwashing. There's no way to know it. But that's not the situation we want. We want, as a society, we want businesses to be honest about what they do. But they can only be honest about what they do if it's clear for everyone and for themselves what they have to report on and what can be measured and what will be measured and what is being appreciated by the consumer. So it's quite a difficult concept in that sense. Values are at stake. Everybody in this room has a different idea of how important sustainability is and how important the different dimensions of sustainability is, because it's personal values, or it's even business values. Also among businesses, you find many different ideas of how fast we have to move with this sustainability transition and which direction we have to go and which point is more important, the social and the environmental, and if the environmental, then is it climate change or is it biodiversity? These kind of questions. It's a collective action problem. One business can make great improvements on making its own processes more sustainable, for instance, using less energy. But in the end, other companies, or actually the whole industry, has to make these changes. So that's why we come to the idea that we need transformation, business transformation. We need transitions, societal transitions, social technical transitions, or social ecological transitions. So these are the directions we have to go. But it affects competitiveness. If I, as a company, want to improve the sustainability, the true sustainability of my product, is my competitor doing similar things? Will the competition be on a level playing field, or am I going to have a competitive disadvantage? So competition is at stake, and policies. We just talked about these European policies. They have to be translated in national policies. You all know that Europe is a combination of 28 different countries, so this translation is already quite difficult. And now we are in a political situation, where some countries are kind of stepping back. Oh, maybe we shouldn't go that far in sustainability. Maybe it's not that problematic. Maybe we really have to protect our employment, and we have to protect our industry. So also in the Netherlands, I'm sorry to say, we now have a government since a few months that really cares less about sustainability. And now we have the situation where business is actually complaining. Business is complaining to the government. We had a long-term perspective. We knew where we had to go. We knew what type of investment. And now as government, you're saying, well, we don't have to do that anymore. So it's chaos, it's uncertainty. And that's, if there's something that businesses don't like, is uncertainty. So this is very, very bad for the future. Well, I would say for the future of the world. But that's the situation we're in. But my key point is that collaboration can solve quite a lot of these issues, or can at least address these issues, can help the businesses to solve them. Though the other points were external. Internal, there are also some challenges, of course. If you take a business model canvas or a business model perspective, then you know that all of the elements of the business model have to be aligned in order to have an effective business model, or in order to be able to earn some money. So all of this changes, transformation to a business, to a more sustainable business, does affect all of these individual parts of the business model, or of the business, or they're listed here as well. So you can imagine that, how does that work out? How can we coordinate those things? Well, of course, that's the task of the manager. But the manager has to be aware of this, that all these elements are very much aligned. Yeah? The manager may be very careful about financing. But I always tell, but it's also human resource management. Make sure you have the right people that are willing to change. Well, luckily, young people, if I take the example of the students, they care a lot about sustainability issues. If I ask at my students, like I said, this last month I gave a course on business theories and sustainability, and then I asked the student, who wants to work for a more sustainable or less sustainable company? Well, you know the answer. Everybody's keen on working for a company that has a good sustainability reputation. So the young people are much more concerned about where they start to work, and since the labor market is tight, they can make a choice. They can choose which company they want to work for. So there's a human resource issue here as well, but supply chain issues as well. All of these issues are important. So far it looks like maybe a bit at my presentation, it's all problems. There's only challenges. That's not the issue. That's not the message I want to give. I mean, there are quite a number of opportunities as well. Opportunities for business, opportunities for entrepreneurs, opportunities for society as a whole. And so this trend towards more sustainability, this sustainability transition or transformation, it brings new products, new markets. It increases technical economic efficiency. Companies are much more aware of their energy use, of their transportation, the CO2 emissions. It can create better society business contracts, or in other words, strengthen their legitimacy. And there are very nice opportunities, and that's where, for instance, the technical people come in. There's great opportunities for young people. Well, I say young, but anyone, but it's usually the young people that come up with new ideas. So there are many startups of students or previous students that have great ideas on coming up with a more sustainable product or a more sustainable technology. So there are a lot of opportunities as well. So the preliminary conclusion is that it's challenging, society is demanding, both from consumer side, NGO side, and legislators. Legislation becoming more strict, certainly in Europe. What does it all mean for collaboration? Well, we have to go back a bit to the traditional type of collaboration. Traditionally, certainly in my field of business administration, economics, organization theory, it was all about strategic alliances, value chains, the supply chain, cooperatives, of course. But then the question is, are these still the right ways for businesses to collaborate? So traditionally, the goals of business collaboration was about efficiencies, reducing cost, increasing market power, bargaining power, accessing particular resources, entering new markets. I added also interest representation. That's not in the article that gives this list, but interest representation is also important, certainly in markets where the government plays an important role. Then as a business, you also need to represent your interest towards the government and towards other societal stakeholders. Joint ventures are traditionally strategic alliances are traditionally very important in this nice scheme of the different types of strategic alliances, basically from contracts to mergers and acquisition. So this has a institutional economics perspective. The strategic alliances are here in the middle, and these are the type of alliances that you see a lot also among companies that want to change their technology and that want to switch to a more sustainable technology, and they don't want to do it alone, but they have to question. Then the question comes up, will they do that with a contractual relationship, or will they do that more with an equity involved relationship where some ownership stakes are involved? I mean, there are no general rules for that, but of course you can understand if the uncertainty is higher And for some, sustainability investment uncertainty is quite high because you don't know whether the technology will work, you don't know whether the market will accept your product, you don't know whether legislation will be straight or will be in circles. So then an equity type of strategic alliance will probably work better. Otherwise, a more contractual relationship will probably also work. Let's skip this one. So what is the relevance of strategic alliance for sustainability businesses? Alliances, they help to strengthen the sourcing of sustainable products. So you see a lot of businesses collaborating to make sure they get their sustainable raw materials, whether these raw materials are food products or whether there are other type of raw materials. Competitiveness, of course, is always important for the companies. So, for instance, joint development of new products or new technologies or even new markets. And reducing risk, as sustainability comes with a lot of risk. It's important for the companies to cover or to reduce that risk and to preferably make sure that you do that together with the others. Well, I will skip this one. Yeah. Now the value chain and the supply chain, that is a traditional field that you're all familiar with. I've been working in this field for many years. Some people prefer the word value chain, others the supply chain, and others the food chain. I think there's a slight difference, but I don't think we have to go into the terminology discussion, but you all understand what we mean by a value chain. And some of the interesting concepts actually came from here. This is something that Decio Silberstein, I think already in 1996, published. And I liked it very much because it's not just the value chain, but it emphasizes that there is an institutional environment, and it emphasizes there is an organizational environment. So whatever happens here, if you look at the farmer or you look at the processor or the transport, I mean, they're all embedded in a larger system where institutions, culture, policies play a role, and they're all supported by all kinds of other types of organizations, whether they're consultants, whether they are banks or other credit institutions, whether they are nowadays certification agencies, very important, technical advisors, all of these supporting organizations, they make the value chain basically work. And then there's another concept that came from here, Sergio Laggerini and Fabio Ciaddate, together with Mike Cook from the University of Missouri. Already more than 20 years, they came up with this idea of the net chain, which is also nice because it was not just the value chain, but they emphasized that at the different levels, there is a lot of collaboration going on, horizontal collaboration going on among the players in a particular stage of the value chain. And other value chain models, you're probably familiar with the global value chain, which is a bit more of we call it the political economy perspective, emphasizing the power relations. And this has been used a lot by scholars from the UK, but also from other countries, to first map, so do a diagnosis of the different value chains in terms of who are the players and what power do they basically have. And if you then want, let's say from a policymaker perspective, NGO perspective, or even a business perspective, want to change something, you have to understand where the power lies. Well, the power lies very often with the lead firm. And the lead firm is, depending on the different types of the value chain, is in just one stage of the value chain, or it's in many of the other stages of the value chain. So if we talk about sustainability transformation, this one is much easier because the lead firm dominates the whole value chain. So it can change at different stages. It can use the production. It can use it can use its control over production, over transport, over processing, over marketing to switch to another, let's say, another type of product. If you think, for instance, about dairy products, if you switch to organic dairy products, if this is the type of value chain, then there's just one company that have to change its strategy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's relatively more easy than in a situation where everybody is very independent and everybody has to somehow agree with and coordinate with the others in order to make the switch. If in this situation, one of the players in the value chain is switching from conventional to organic, but the others do not, we have a coordination problem. So that's the nice thing about this global value chain models, that the coordination issue and is very explicit. All right, then we also have in the literature, also in practice, this concept of sustainable supply chain management has become more popular. It basically means more integration of bias suppliers, more information being transferred. That is crucial. That's also with the legislative or the institutional background that I showed before, that information is becoming more important. Traceability, tracking, blockchain can maybe help. Also, the third parties have become much more important. Certification agencies, intermediaries, those are becoming much more important to help businesses make that switch from a regular or conventional supply chain to a sustainable supply chain. I just want to show you one example, and I think there was a little movie behind this. Let's see where it works. Okay, this is not the movie, but at least what this shows, but I cannot just say. What it basically, this is an example of sustainable dairy chain in the Netherlands. It basically means that all the businesses in the Dutch dairy sector, and now we talk about, not exactly all, but most, we talk about farmers, we talk about processors, we talk about retail. They all are member of this, what I call platform. So it's a platform organization. My university is member of the platform. And what they do, they discuss among themselves. So that's where it all starts. Exchange of information and ideas. And they discuss what do we find important for the Netherlands, our dairy sector as a whole. So it's not about the individual business strategy, but it's more a sectoral approach. So what do we find important? Climate change is important. Dairy herd improvement is important. Biodiversity is important. Cows in the meadows is important. The safety on the farm is important. So they discuss these things. Then they develop metrics. That's usually where the scientists from our university come in. Mostly, well, not mostly, but particularly from animal science departments. They develop metrics. Then they agree among themselves, what metrics are we going to use? Well, then it becomes a bit tricky already, because then it becomes strategic, which company is willing to do what. But the nice thing is, it is a nice example of where the whole industry does align, does discuss, does take action in order to make the whole industry, the Dutch dairy sector, a more sustainable dairy sector. And then, of course, it's up to the individual companies to implement those things. It's voluntary, so there's no obligation, but it leaves, for the businesses involved, it's very clear because their competitors are there. They also know, these businesses, that what is feasible, what is not feasible in terms of gaining the right data. There is also, they have some research, some money for doing research. So they basically then hire usually people from our university to do some research on more technical issues, CO2 or more what happens on the farm in terms of biodiversity. So it's a nice example of collaboration, business collaboration, that will help them at least get rid of some of the uncertainties and some of the lack of information. All right, now if we move to new insights on business collaboration. I put down here 4 different insights that was gained by the research we've been doing, but also by doing a literature review on these issues. Networks and platforms have become much more important. Already this morning we saw some examples. Yesterday we heard some examples. So that's, I'll elaborate on that. Business model innovation. So what type of innovation can and will be implemented in the different businesses? And how much collaboration will that require? An ecosystem perspective. So it's no longer just about the value chain. It's no longer about an individual business, but it's about the whole system of all the actors involved, all the societal stakeholders, all the businesses. What can they do together? Because a sustainability transition is not the transition of one company, it's the transition of a food system. And we have realized that businesses have embraced, have acknowledged this transition thinking. It's something that originally came much more from, let's say, sociology, but also from biology. But now businesses are really, at least what I've seen, are really acknowledging that this system thinking and this transition of the system thinking has become important. Let me show you some examples. First, a little bit of theory. This very nice article by Prof and Keynote shows you that there are different types of networks. So you have shared governance network where there's no leader, but people do exchange information. It could be business clubs or very loose or networks where people just share information. If something is new, this is usually where it starts. People get together, companies get together and just share some information. It's nice for information sharing, but it doesn't bring them necessarily much further. Another type of network is when there is a very clear a leader, and the most common example of this type of network is in the car industry, where you usually have a lead organization. I just picked one, Toyota, that has a number of first-tier suppliers. They have second-tier suppliers. They have third-tier suppliers, and maybe even other suppliers. So it's really a network of companies. They are aligned either by contractual, but very often also by ownership relationships. So the lead company is very dominant. If there's something has to change, then it's a lead company that really coordinate the changes within the network. But I think the most interesting one is this third one is the network administrative organization, where actually it started with this one, and then they realized these businesses, okay, if we want to get more clear about what sustainability means for us, and if we're going to measure it, and if we're going to report it, we need some kind of an administrative organization. This is the NAO that will do the work for us. And that's the type of organizations, network organizations that you see. You have seen enormous growth in that. And just give you some examples here. Just some examples of a Sustainability Agriculture Initiative. The SIE platform is an international one. Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, you're all familiar with. So we have standard setting platforms, we have certification platforms, multi-stakeholder platform, knowledge exchange platforms. So in this sustainability transition, these platforms have become much more important. And I'll just want to show you one example from the Netherlands, the Sustainable Trade Initiative, which was established in 2008, actually by the Ministry of Economic Affairs. But it's a foundation, it's an international foundation. Then also the Swiss Ministry of Development Corporation is one of the founders or funders, I should say. Public and private stakeholders to make global agriculture market more sustainable and more inclusive. So they work on all kinds of challenges for value chains, climate change, unfair working conditions, unequal. So basically it's an initiative by the Ministry of Economic Affairs. There were a lot of NGOs already working on this. You probably all know the Fair Trade label that was already that was established by a an NGO called Solidaridad in the early 1990s. But then companies didn't feel comfortable working directly with these NGOs. And then the ministry, the Dutch government, it's not just one ministry, the Dutch government said, but we have to push this. We have to make sure that these global value chains, and of course, you have to realize that the Dutch agri-food industry is very strong, very international. So there are a lot of companies with very global value chains, basically global supply chains. So the Dutch government was very keen on bringing NGOs and businesses, and not just small business, but the large global working businesses together into one initiative to again, first, this is already 2008, to find out what are the problems and what are the more potential solutions, and then to develop tools and action programs and projects to really make some change happen. So their principles were co-funding, convening. So first they start with bringing people together, but also by learning activities. So help the companies also, that was one of their tasks, help the companies to learn on how to make their supply chains more sustainable. Let's just see whether this works. It is a little video. Yeah, let's accept that. It's just 1 minute video showing what they're actually doing. And then there is no sound. Is there any way we get... Otherwise, we'll do it with sound. We just watch the video. I'm afraid we can't have the sound, and we can't have the slides as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me continue. So the key point was basically it's a multi-stakeholder organization that really helps businesses to look in each other's kitchen, to share their ideas, and in the end to make the value chain, because we're talking about large companies like dairy companies, Mondelez, Mars, Friesland, Campina, Unilever. These big companies, they all have long value chains going all the way to the smallholder farmers in Africa and Asia, and they want these supply chains more sustainable. Now with the new European legislation, there's even a legislative or an institutional pressure to do that, but already in 2008, they realized that we have to work on this. So we'll skip the video and just move on to another example. So sustainable business model innovation is something that is very popular nowadays. So basically, there's a lot of literature on sustainable business model innovation. So it means business models shifts to sustainable and in the end to circular business model. On the one hand, I like this literature very much because it gives a lot of examples of new businesses that have moved to new markets and new products. On the other hand, the literature is a bit case by case. So it's not necessarily that we have very good data on how these examples and cases of business model innovation can be generalized to a larger industry base or to or even a whole sector. But still, they're nice as examples. Let's switch that. And then the last point I want to make in terms of this new insight is this transition thinking. So as I said, businesses now embrace also the transition thinking. This is a very classical way of thinking in terms of transitions. Some of you, maybe most of you, may be familiar with the multi-level perspective, where there is this what we call the regime, this dominant thinking in terms of how industries, but also the whole system, the ecosystem evolves over time. There are some social technical landscapes. So what are the dominant technologies? What are the dominant economic paradigms? And then the interesting thing is, of course, that somewhere here down here, there are innovations, there are niches, there are nice examples of either new technologies or new businesses, startups, scale-ups. And then the key question is, to what extent can these small examples of some more sustainable businesses, can they actually infuse the regime? Can they actually lead to major changes here? That means that either some of the incumbent companies will take up the niches here, or some of the incumbent companies may even go bankrupt if they're not able to make the switch. But the key point is, of course, it's not just about business strategy, it's about also the institutional organizational environment that should change as well. For instance, think about finance for companies. Nowadays, I already mentioned that, is that a lot of banks and investors, they're looking much more critical at the sustainability of the investment portfolio, of the investment opportunities they have. So and if you are a sustainable business, you can get a discount on the interest rate for your loans. So that's an example of how. And then of course it's also science, but science, well, we have been working on this sustainability for a long period of time. Culture is very difficult to change, but it is slowly changing. But it goes back a bit, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's this classical procession procedure. But it is some other literature emphasizes what does that mean to the sustainable food system. Farming as a multifunctional activity. Still some debate about that. whether farming should be focused and very specialized, or whether all farms should be multifunctional. Functional. I think there's a little bit of a difference in maybe the European perspective, with many small farms with not so well natural conditions like hills and mountains and things like that. So I think for the European context, this multifunctional activity is maybe a bit more important than for the Brazilian context. Still, it's something to think about. Collaboration with non-traditional stakeholders. That if I look at the dairy companies in our country, if you would say in 20 years ago, well, over 20 years, you would be working with NGOs that care for environment, that care for animal welfare, that care for climate, that care for that, they would say, no way, no way. These are our enemies. But now they do. They all collaborate. They all are a member of platforms or networks. They love to work with NGOs, these dairy companies. The Friesland Campina, the largest dairy company in the Netherlands, they work with Worldwide Food for Nature, the Fund for Nature. They work with a local NGOs that care for natural environment. They work with an environmental NGO. They work with many because it can strengthen their legitimacy. So it can sometimes even strengthen their marketing. They learn from these NGOs, and it also shows them that they have realized that they cannot do everything themselves, and they need the support of these organizations. Of course, they're keen to select these organizations. Not everyone is still a friend, but at least there's much more collaboration with what I would call non-traditional partners. So this is some examples. Let me. A few points about cooperatives, if I may. How much time do I still have? 10 minutes? Yeah, could also be 1 minute. But then you miss my story about cooperatives. You don't want to miss that. So I've been working on cooperatives, studying cooperatives, the internal governance of cooperatives, not only in the Netherlands and Europe, but also in other countries. Quite some. One of the PhD students I supervised was actually looking at the member commitment in dairy, not in dairy corporate, but in cooperatives, in agricultural cooperatives in Brazil, in the state of Paraná. There are a lot of interesting studies, and I was involved in some of them in cooperatives in China, in Africa, Indonesia. But the key point is that the key question actually is to what extent do cooperatives contribute, or to what extent are they able to make also that transition? And we see it's quite difficult. On the one hand, it's easy. There are many nice examples of small farmer cooperatives, community cooperatives, farmer-consumer collaborations, community-supported agriculture, short food supply chain type of cooperatives that are very nice examples of where a cooperative can make a change, is the right organizational structure to make that transition possible. But if we talk about the large ones, the large agri-business cooperatives, then it becomes a bit more challenging. And let me give you one example from my own country, which is about Friesland Campina, which is quite a large dairy company from the Netherlands, with 13,000 billion turnover in 2022, with at that moment 14,000 members still. For them, it was very difficult. I just said that they are working now with NGOs and environmental NGOs, sustainability-oriented NGOs, animal welfare NGOs, but that has been quite difficult to get to that point, because farmers were rather conservative in the saying, no, all this sustainability talk, it's all about, it will all cost us, and what does it give us? We're happy to invest in sustainable practices, but then give us a bit more money for our milk. Give us a bit more money for our milk so that we can cover the cost of these sustainable agricultural practices. So that has been a debate for a long time. And since it's a cooperative, farmers are the owners and the decision makers. So while the managers on the one hand said, no, we have to move this direction. And the managers, they came up with all kind of certification and they said, here we see opportunities and here we see opportunities. The members said, no, don't go too fast because we don't get our investment back. Well, after a number of years, everybody starts to realize that there is no going back. There is only one direction, which means more sustainability. So now they have come up with a very elaborate system where they actually so they have a very elaborate climate action program where they say, okay, by 2050 we want to achieve net climate neutrality in scope 1, 2, and 3. So no carbon emissions anymore. And for 2030 they have come up with a number of targets. So they're very explicit nowadays. It took a number of years, but they're very explicit nowadays. And farmers have accepted that because they have been able to translate these very ambitious goals, well, maybe not so very ambitious, but at least these goals, into a set of indicators. And then let's see where I can get this. And let's try again. So there's no sound, but still you can. Oh boy, sorry, doesn't work. Anyway, doesn't work. But what I wanted to show is that FrieslandCampina now has a very elaborate set of indicators, 15 different indicators where farmers on CO2 reduction, on improving biodiversity, on animal welfare, on keeping the cows in the meadow and the different other issues, where they can earn points, and these points will translate in a higher price for their milk. So it's a quite an elaborate system. It took a while to develop this system, and it took a while to get all the members convinced that this is a good system. But they were, well, they had the advantage of, or there was the advantage that another cooperative had already started earlier with this. So there was an example of yes, it works. And farmers now know exactly. So the company does not put any targets on the farmers, but it says, if you improve your CO2 carbon footprint, if you improve the biodiversity on your farm, we'll give you some extra money. And they have this, like I said, they have for every 15 points, they have a scale. You can do a little bit, you can do a lot, you can do more, and it all translates into a few cents more for your liter of milk, which is for a large farmer already quite a lot. So it works. So now we have the metrics and we have the message to the farmers. There are different ways how farmers can actually support their members. Huh? So I think that's one of the things, the key points of the agricultural cooperatives. They can support their members in making specific decisions. They have a way, they usually have the trust of the members. They have a close relationship. They know they have a lot of information from the members. So they have different ways of influencing their members. Of course, the best would be economic incentives. I just gave an example of that. But there could be material support in the form of inputs. Cooperatives give the members trainings. They do experiments. We have some nice example also of FrieslandCampina. It's doing actually experimenting with soybean production. Well, you would say, what is a dairy cooperative? Why would they care about soybean? But there's an enormous growth in the Netherlands of soy milk. So there's, well, not an enormous, but at least there is a market, and the market is increasing for plant-based dairy products. And then again, we had a discussion, and FrieslandCampina had a discussion, should we move into this market, yes or no? Well, their competitors did it way back already. For instance, Danone had invested 20 years ago already in soy milk. But now FrieslandCampina said, yes, we also move into that because it's important for our product portfolio. But we also want to help our members, the dairy farmers that do think they can earn some extra here, to experiment with this. So some dairy farmers have 1 hectare or 2 hectares of soy, and I know actually even one farmer who's actually making out of that the soybeans their own soy milk and selling that to the baristas in Amsterdam. So it's a quite high end market, but they earn some extra money with that. So those are some experiments. It's just an example, but the cooperative can help the producers in those type of experiments. Organizing change, of course, making sure that changes are aligned among the members, but also with others, with CSOs, community, civil society organizations. And then the social mechanisms are very important in the cooperative. There is trust. There is a lot of meetings of people. People are willing. They're open. I don't know any type of business that is more open about what they do actually than a cooperative. That is a very strong tradition for us researchers. I'm very happy with that because it's way easier to get data from cooperatives than from other type of businesses. All right, I'll come to my conclusion. And then I'm still within the 10 minutes, I hope, Vivian. There's a lot of research on system thinking, business transformation, innovation ecosystem. And I'm very happy to see that businesses realize that that's the way they have to think themselves. It's not just making an individual change. It's not just making a change in the value chain, but it's the whole ecosystem or the whole food system that they are part of and that has to change. Traditional ways of collaborating among businesses like strategic alliances, like value chains, cooperatives are still important, but these networks and platforms have become much more important, not just to learn from, but also to set industry-wide standards, to do lobbying and interest representation towards the government, to show to other businesses that they are on the right track. Co-creation processes. We do quite a lot of projects in our university directly with businesses, farmers, other businesses, to co-create new products, to co-create new processes, and to see how their business models can be changed into more innovative business models. And finally, businesses do acknowledge that collaboration with NGOs, other types of societal stakeholders, civil society organizations is extremely important to get the legitimacy, but also to learn from these organizations and to have these organizations help them move into the right direction. And with those final conclusions, I would like to thank you very much for your listening. And the floor is open for questions, I think.
Thank you very much, Jos, for coming all the way to Brazil. And I think it was a very, very interesting presentation. And all the time I was thinking about how I can connect those very interesting questions with my own research. And I hope the audience had a similar reaction. So please.
Professor, hi, my name is Larissa. I work at a agri-tech, and that's called AgroTools. That is a company that monitors and actually manages the risk, social and environmental risk for big companies like Danone, Nestle, JBS. And we are dealing now with UGR. I think you know what it is. So I would like to know your point of view about UGR, since we are talking about collaboration and we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty about when actually the law is going to be applied. I mean, for all the countries that are directly or indirectly impacted by the law. So I would like to know about your point of view, not actually talk about your professor or your point of view of professor, you know? It's more like about how the UGR will impact in Brazil and other countries like Brazil. The UGR. Yeah, the regulation for products that are not with deforestation, that deforestation free, you know?
a very practical issue when this legislation will be implemented. That's difficult to say. Like I said, it's a European directive. It has been approved at the European level, but now it has to be translated into national legislation, and some countries will be a little bit faster and others will be delayed. So it may take 1, 2, 3, 4 years before it will affect everyone. But I think the most important point is that it shows which direction things are going. So if companies are keen, they would already start to collect the data and maybe do some internal reporting. You don't necessarily have to report it to the whole world, but do at least some internal reporting about the issues the materiality issues that are important for the company. So. But I'm not sure that answers your question, but.
Was going to be applied, I think in December this year, but we have a proposal for delay by the Commission, and we don't know yet if it's going to be applied in December or no. So that's why there's.
I understand the question, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a politician, so I wish I could tell you the answer, but I'm afraid I don't know these details. But definitely it is all delayed with the current political climate in Europe. It's all delayed, but I don't expect that it will be abolished or rejected. So it may delay another year, but it will come. It will come, and if you know what type of legislation will impact your company, you can proactively make sure that you're ready for it, and then maybe that's another issue. Then, of course, can you make any competitive benefit from showing that you're complying with the legislation? Probably not. If the legislation is the same for everyone, it doesn't generate you a competitive advantage in the short, on the long term. But maybe in the short term, if you say, okay, we're doing very well, maybe your customers in Europe are happy. You can make your customers happy, and you can establish stronger relationship with them. But that's a more general strategic management answer, because I don't know the exact answer to your question.
The Campina example, how do you monitor the value chain, this experience? How do you monitor the farmers if who will apply the more sustainable practices, like you said? And if there is a list for, I don't know if it's Campina or the other example, idea H, the farmer can apply for that. Is a voluntary system, and there is a list of practices that they can choose which one will apply in the farm to receive an extra money, a bonus. And how do you monitor them?
Agricultural practices. For instance, how much of your land you keep for flowers, or how you treat your animals, how much antibiotics you use, whether your cows, how many days they go into the field and in the barn, what type of fuel you use, what type of renewable, not renewable energy you use. And they have a system that every farmer has to comply to a certain minimum. And that minimum has become more strict over time. And then beyond that minimum, they can earn extra points, and with points, you can earn extra money. And then it's up to the farmer how far he goes. It's like a scale from 0 to 100, and the farmer can choose to improve the practice anywhere on that scale. And if he's higher, get more points, then he get more money. But there's a very elaborate system of practices. They have discussed that in the member council. So all the farmers, the 11,000 or 14,000 farmers have agreed to that. And they have to submit information about this. So the farmers have to provide quite a lot of information about exactly how many fertilizers they use, on how many fuel they use, what type of fuel, how many cows, what age, how many hectares, and where they use every hectare of land for. So it's a very sophisticated system of providing information to the cooperative. Sorry? They have to enter that in a computer. Yeah, they do that. So it's as much as possible, it is automatized, but they have to enter quite a lot of information in the computer. Yeah, and that has raised the number of questions or unwillingness of some members. So that's also why it took quite some. This system has been implemented by Friesland Campina, let's say 5 years ago, but there was another cooperative, a small one, 400 members, that had it 15 years ago already. But with 400 members, it's much easier to get together and to come to a joint agreement. And they were all from the same region, and they all sold under the same brand, mainly in the well, not only in the local market, but with a small cooperative, it's easier to organize this than a cooperative like Friesland Campina that has 14,000 members in different countries, actually. So yeah, so it has taken a while, but I think now with Friesland Campina doing this, it makes a big step. Friesland Campina is the largest dairy cooperative in the Netherlands. It produces about 75% of all milk in the Netherlands. So if Friesland Campina is going this way, then the rest will follow. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, the extra money, but also farmers have also become to understand that there is only one direction. It's more sustainable. But there has been a lot of protest about, not so much about what Friesland Campina as a cooperative is doing, but there has been a lot of protest among farmers about what the government is pushing the farmers, because the government says you cannot. You have with your manure, your emissions of nitrate are too high. Phosphate is too high. So there is a certain maximum of nitrate and phosphate you can put on a hectare of land, and that will be reduced over time, and that leads to a lot of protests from farmers. So there is a lot of dissatisfaction among farmers, but it's mainly towards the government, because the government is unpredictable and unreliable, and not so much towards the cooperative, because they understand that the customers of Friesland Campina being such a large cooperative dairy company, they sell to a lot of other food companies. They sell to Danone even. They sell to Mars. They sell to Mondelez. They sell to half of all the pharmaceutical companies in the world are client of Friesland Campina. They are a major producer of infant formula, the baby milk powder. So they have very high standard products. So they want their supply chain to be as good as possible in terms of quality and in terms of sustainability. And yes, the farmers have to comply that, and they agree with that now. Yeah.
Okay, so we have time for a final question.
Thank you, Professor Jos, for a presentation. Is there any NGO or a third party involved in the monitoring process of this sustainable practices? And Friesland Campina is labeling their products, claiming that they are doing more sustainable farming.
first, the latter question is Friesland Campina claiming their milk is or their dairy products are more sustainable. They're very careful with doing that because well, they have to prove that, of course. And again, like I said, you can easily put a label sustainability on your packaging, but it doesn't say much. And since they are such a large player in the Dutch dairy sector, 75% of all the milk, they're very careful in doing things that they could be criticized for. So they are very careful in doing that. But in their business-to-business relationship with other companies, yes, they do show, you know, the outcome of these measurements of sustainability, and of course, they compete with other companies, other suppliers of milk, and if they can show they are doing relatively better than the others, they have a competitive advantage. So they use it more in the business-to-business marketing than in the business-to-consumer marketing. I'm not saying they do not claim that are sustainable, and of course, if they have an advertisements on the television, you see all these nice meadows and cows and flowers and things like that. But like every dairy company is basically doing, but they're a little bit careful to claim something because everyone will jump on them if it's not correct, if they cannot prove it. That's the disadvantage of being the most important, the largest player in that industry. Yeah.
So thank you so much. I'm sure the topic would raise many questions from the audience, but unfortunately we're out of time. So thanks again for coming, and thank you.